Okay.
What bracha are these?
Sorry?
What bracha would you make on these?
Shakon, I think. I don't even know what they are, but I think it's candy with sesame around it. Is it compacted sesame seeds?
With honey.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's an Israeli snack.
Oh well, in that case, what do you do?
Israeli says it's much thicker and bigger.
So what? I'll make that.
I had them as kids.
Shakon, no?
It's probably charcoal.
Probably
Yeah.
Shakon. Okay, fine. Right.
If you serve a salad, then you can make a bracha on that.
Okay. So basically, a bit of a disaster last week. Let's see if we can try and remedy that a little bit. Here's a story. I don't know if I've ever told you the story. It's a true story. I used to live, obviously, as you know, in England. I'm in a city called Manchester in England. And once they came to the front door, two guys. It was a father and son. They were Sephardi Jews, Moroccan, I think. And I don't want to be unkind, but they looked like gangsters. I mean, they really looked really rough. So they were there because he was collecting because his wife had cancer. I mean, who's not going to give to somebody whose wife's got cancer? Of course, at the time, my late wife had cancer. So I gave him, as generously as I could, and that was that. 3 months later, again, I was about to give a share, same thing. The doorbell rang, and I opened the door, and there was the guy again. That was the older guy this time. And he was there because now his son had cancer, which sounded a little bit suspicious at this stage. 3 months later, I have cancer, okay, fine. I think I gave him as well. And then 3 months later, he came back to the front door because now I think it was the dog, the cat, the pet rabbit, the goldfish, something like that had cancer. I mean, it was pretty obvious that this was a scam.
They live in Chernobyl.
Israelis actually. Anyway, so basically, it became so obvious that these were scam artists and not very artistic that the Base Team eventually put up posters on all the walls with pictures of these two guys. So all the lampposts, these guys are frauds. Don't give any money to them. So I just got back with my wife from the cancer hospital in Manchester, England. It's called the Christie's, it's a very famous cancer hospital. They developed the breast cancer drug tamoxifen there. And I was getting out the car, my wife had already got into the house. And who's waddling along the road? But the old guy, he's back, I don't know who's got cancer at this stage. And so I was taking stuffing out the trunk of the car, and he starts his spiel. And it's quite traumatic going with somebody to a cancer hospital. I mean, just being in these places is pretty traumatic. Seeing people because often they look dreadful. And I wasn't feeling very. My whole life is truly, I suppose, an ongoing battle between the Gateshead and the Glasgow. Which side is going to succeed? Which one is going to dominate? And when he came up to me at that moment in time, I'm afraid the Glasgow was definitely. When I lose my temper, which never happens, but when I lose my temper, then my Scottish accent becomes extremely Scottish. I mean, I don't mean it to, it just automatically does. So in Ivrit, with an extremely Scottish accent, which sounds very, very funny, I said to him, don't you think that the joke has gone on far enough? Sam, everybody knows. Look, that's your face over there on the lamppost. Everybody knows this is a sheker gomor. It's a complete lie. Why don't you go out and get a job? Why are you stealing money halakhically, incidentally, if you've got $1,000, if you're lucky, to give away every month for your Maisa, for your halakhic obligation to give your Maisa, then if you give 500 of it to somebody and somebody is a fraud, you've not given your Maisa. You still have to. That's a scary thought. So he's stealing. I mean, he's stealing from real anim, real poor people, real people with wives with cancers. And so I said, why don't you just? Everybody knows it's just a joke. And I don't think I was very kind. So what do you think his reaction was?
No, it's we'll do it again.
Shocked at this incredible sheker and this azut. And he started shouting at me. I can't remember. I was out shouting, and he started walking the way he was coming, and he shouted, waving his finger as he walked away. And there's a Lubavitch guy coming along the road because we used to live opposite the Lubavitch yeshiva. And he's in the distance, so I could see him. He's pointing at me. I went into the house. And then it occurred to me, suppose he gave me a klola. Suppose he gave me a klala, a curse. We take curses very seriously. Ishkingalechta, as they say in Yiddish. It's not a joke. Suppose, in all the things he was telling about what Russia was, he gave me a curse. So from my roof, the gates of Rabbi Rachel was the Chatzadli Bracha. And I told him the story. So he gave a little sort of like, I heard a tiny little chuckle in the background. And he told me a story. He said the Chofetz Chaim, when he was a boy, once kicked a football through a neighbour's window. A neighbour's house kicked it through. So this fella came out and he gave him every curse under the sun. This should happen to you. This, no children, the whole, every clod he could imagine. And the Chofetz Chaim davened for the rest of his life 3 times a day in his Shemona Esrei, in his Amidah, that these curses should not come true. Right? So the advice of my Rov to me was that you should daven it. If there was, I don't know if there was a curse. In his case, it was a barai. It was a definite. In my case, I'm not sure. But you should daven that it should not come true. Interesting story, huh? Why do you think I told you the story? What's the point of the story?
At the effect of a curse, even from a source that you would think would not be significant, should be treated with the gravity of its potential.
I think it's very, yes, it's a very important point. That's not why I told you. Any other things you think I'm trying to tell you in the story? The Chofetz Chaim kicked a football. The Chofetz Chaim, as a little boy, kicked a football. He was a normal kid. In the early biographies of the Gedolim, the early art scrolls, I think, I'm not trying to be unfair, maybe it wasn't the art scrolls, but very often, back when English, Judaic, and really, there was a renaissance, if that's the correct word, around about the 80s, I'm guessing, 70s. They often portrayed Tzaddikim as, when he was born, light filled the room, which is what happened when I was born, by the way. And then his life was one of complete tzidkus and saintly behaviour without flaw or pause. And then later on, when he's 120 lying in his deathbed, then even more light filled the room, and boom, he passed away and went to Shemai. Total nonsense. Utter rubbish. Including the Chofetz Chaim. The reason I tell you the story about the Chofetz Chaim is because everybody would agree. And it's very unusual to find somebody that everybody agrees with. But whether you're Hasidic, whether you're Litvish, or whether you're Sephardi, the name of the Chofetz Chaim is universally accepted that he was a tzaddik gomer. What, can you give me an example of a bad midah that he had? Lashon Hara? No. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Rabbi Dessler's famous essay on Bechir, where you give the mashal of somebody giving up smoking, was based on his giving up smoking. So that's a good idea. I mean, you would imagine he made that the whole, as it were, crusade and campaign of his life, because maybe he had a negia in that direction. I'm not quite sure, but certainly there's one bad character trait he certainly had. If I remind you, he was a Cohen, can you guess? Yes, he had a temper. My Rov, the Gates of Rov, Rabbi Rakov told me that the Chofetz Chaim would sometimes come home. When you're the godly, I mean, even a little rabbi like me, a minuscule rabbi, but you're often dealing with horrible things that people do. And Jews really let themselves down, but not just let themselves down. Sometimes Jewish people do terrible things. You can think of the abuse cases that sometimes are heard, and horrible things. And I was involved in 3 of these cases this week, and I find it quite distressing. And at least in one of them, my reaction was, very Scottish. Somebody was behaving very badly. But the Chofetz Chaim, as the Gadol Hador, or certainly one of the Gadol Hador, would hear terrible things that people did. And because he had a temper, he would sometimes, my Rav said, come home, he would open the front door, he would stand at the wall and listen to this, and sometimes shout at the wall for up to 20 minutes to get all the anger out of himself. And only then would he come into the room where his wife and his children were. Why should they suffer because he was in a bad mood, because he was upset and angry? Now, when you hear a story like that, that's a story which is utterly inspirational, because if you tell me the story of the Chofetz Chaim, the previous version, light filled the room, he was a malach, then what's that got to do with me? In fact, one of my closest friends is somebody called Ramosha Kupis. He's the son-in-law of the late Manchester Rosh Hashiva, Lahavdil. And Ramosh Kupis is a character, fabulous mechanach. He was involved in his own little kiruv thing in Manchester. He gave a share in Manchester Commercial, Manchester Yeshiva as well. Wonderful, friendly, gorgeous person, a delight. And he told me when he was a young man, he was at a camp in the Catskills, an Agudas Israel camp. Boys, I don't know, maybe Camp Aguda, I don't know if there is such a thing. And one day, a bunch of other young men from a different sort of Orthodox camp gate crashed. So they came into the boys' dormitories and they brought in some alcoholic beverages, and they sat there schmoozing, etc. And eventually, after a while, they get down to the purpose of their visit, which was, of course, they wanted to convert them to follow their particular form of their mahalach, their path in Judaism, their Hasidus. And so one of the boys turned to the other group of boys, including Rabbi Kupitz, and said, "You should be a chassid of our Rebbe. Our Rebbe is a malach. He has no Yetzer Hara." To which Rabbi Kupitz, in his inimicable style, turned around and said, "Well, if he's got no Yetzer Hara, he's no good to me, because I do have a Yetzer Hara." And of course, there's a very important point there. Malachim don't get us. Malachim want to kill all of us all the time. They just don't understand us. When Hashem said to the Malachim, "Let us make man," they turned around. I told you this once. What did they turn around and said? See? It's a trick question. Hashem said to the Malachim, "Let us make man." What did the Malachim say?
What's man?
Good. Oh, somebody remembered. What's a man? There never had been one before. So he tells us our nature, and our nature is that we can be greater than you or we can rebel against Hashem. That sounded crazy to them, because they don't get us. They live in a world where they see Hashem clearly and therefore have no bechira. When they come to this world, as the Nephilim did, then they have bechira. Because this is a world where Hashem is hidden. But up there, Hashem's not hidden, so they've got no bechira, so they can't understand us at all. Every human being, from a malach's point of view, is a Rasha. Even if you're a Moshe Rabbeinu, even if a Chavetz Chaim, when your Yetzer Hara came and proposed a particular Avera to you, you considered it. Because you're a tzaddik, you rejected it, but you considered it. From their point of view, you considered it. Rasha. Boom, they want to kill us all. And that's why Rashi famously says in Parshas Noach, when the destroying angel comes to the world, Andromusia comes to the world, it's not able to distinguish between the good guys and the bad guys. Because we're all bad guys. They don't get us. So therefore, what good is it having a Rebbe who is on that Madriga? Then he doesn't get you. So that was he made it into a joke, but that was a very important point. But if you tell me, so when Moshe Kubitz turned around and said, you know what, if he's got no Yetzer Hara, he's not good to me. When you go and see somebody for advice, for help, you've got to feel he gets you. He understands you. In my book going back to the cancer story, I wrote a book about people dealing with, helping people with very seriously ill, called The Little Book for Big Worries, which you should all have. Everybody should have it. It's simply telling you how to look after sick people, which is a mitzvah I hope we're all going to be doing at some point in our life. But you want to do it well, say the right thing, do the right things, etc. And in it I talk about something called an equivalence of suffering. People come to me all the time to talk about cancer. I'm not an oncologist, I'm not a doctor, but people know that I had a wife who was sick with cancer, so I understand what they're going through. If you go and see somebody, the mitzvah in Pirkei Avos of noisa ba'ol and chaverei, of feeling somebody's suffering as though it's your own suffering, can only be if you can feel somebody's suffering, if you can see it, if you can picture yourself. As Rashi says in the Pasuk in Mishpatim, "Im keses salve esami," if you lend my people money, es he'oni imoch, the poor person with you, he'oni imoch. So Rashi is interested in the oni imoch. Just say the poor person. What's the imoch? Says Rashi, have a mistakel ba'atzmecha ki la'at oni. Picture yourself. Make a picture yourself as though you're the guy standing at the door, with, collecting money for this, that, and the other. And if you can't make that picture, then you can't do it. I heard on BBC Radio, I was listening the other day, and some Indian philosopher lady was on, and she said it was very clever, very interesting thing. She was talking about the lack of women politicians in Indian society. And the people who are in female politicians in India, it's always because they're Mrs. somebody, they're somebody's wife or they're somebody's daughter, the Gandhi dynasty, etc. And she said a line which I thought was, for me, it resonated Jewishly very nicely. If you can't see, you can't be. Isn't that a good line? So he was saying, if you can't see women being politicians, then it won't inspire you to be the same thing. If you can't see it, if I'm advising you and I can't see it, I can't be it. I can't feel, I can't do noisa ba'ol and chaverei. So, the Chavetz Chaim took the temper, and because he had a temper and overcame it, or had strategies to deal with it so it never hurt anybody or it never became a bad thing. That's inspirational. Oh, you know what? Maybe I could become a little Chofetz Chaim as well. Maybe I could do that. If he could go in that direction. But if you set the bar to the standard of a Malach, then that measure is too high for a person. I can never get that high. So it's got to be somebody you can actually touch. So here's an important thing. So the Chofetz Chaim, therefore, started as a normal human being and went on to become a great, an exceptional, one of the most famous in Klal Yisrael's history's human being, universally recognized. Fantastic. That opens up the road for us as well. But there's rules to talk about here, and it's interesting that the Chofetz Chaim, this great tzaddik, he's known for his books, but his books are interestingly, there's lots of little books, but his chief works are all halacha works. The Mishnah Berurah is a work of halacha. Shemir Salosh and the Chofetz Chaim. These are books. Interesting. We think about as dealing with a shkafa thing, but these are halachas, old books of halacha, as we'll refer to in a second. And of course, there's a book called the Havas Chesed. The Havas Chesed is a book of halacha. The halachas of Chesed. To become who he became wasn't just, I want to become a big person. That's it. Good. No. And now, what are you going to do about it? That there's a path, there's a mahalach for a person to get to the place you're supposed to go. We've rules to get you there. And a very important thing to bear in mind is that was a journey. The Chofetz Chaim was in a journey from beginning to end, as we all are. And that journey is something which is going to face obviously lots of stumbling blocks and lots of trouble on the path as you make that journey. But it's a long journey. You didn't just become the Chofetz Chaim overnight. You lived a long life, and it's a long journey to make. Because I fly around the world, making I'll make a living, I suppose. Then basically, I find myself at airports very often, and particularly at the gates of airports. You've got these great big, TV screens to keep the people entertained while the flight's delayed. And very often they will show sports on it rather than news, because they're going to show news, especially today, that's going to antagonize at least 50% of the people watching. If it's about on Fox News, then people watch it. Of MSNBC or these sorts of programs, or CNN, then the other people are going to be upset. So a nice neutral choice is sports, and it's particularly when it comes to the Olympic Games. Then of course it's just wall-to-wall sports. Have you ever seen the 100-yard race, the 100-yard dash? Ever seen that at the Olympic Games? You've got elite athletes who have prepared themselves and trained themselves to this moment for over 4 years, because it's 4 years between Olympic Games, isn't it? And so there's I mentioned this to you not too long ago. They're in this starting position, all ready to go. The guy fires the starting pistol, poof, and off they go. They run 100 yards, and then at the end of that, they are completely, I think the phrase in America is wiped. Is that right? They're completely gone. They're standing, some are holding their sides, and some are panting, and some are falling over, and then they bring in the stretchers and schlep someone off, which is, of course, the most interesting bit. But it's interesting to see that also in the Olympic Games they have the marathon, which of course is a Greek word. And the marathon was a 26 and a quarter mile race. Now, how come these guys can only do 100 yards, and somebody else can do 26 miles an hour? So they pace themselves slowly. Pace yourself slowly. If you try and do it all at once, then you'll fizzle out and you could easily kill yourself. But if you pace yourself, you can do a marathon and it's slow. And even if you pace yourself properly, you can even have a little bit of energy left for the last, 10 yards if somebody's about to overtake you and do it. So we're here for the long haul. Becoming a better person is moving into the long haul. Yeah. There is an essay by Shalom. Before we get to that. The Cedric Kedoshim, which unfortunately our video let us down with last week, but I saw something afterwards which I thought was fantastic, and it got me very, very excited. V'yidaber shel Moshe limor, daber al kol hadas b'nei Israel, speak to the entire Jewish people, but Marta Alehem, say to them, Kedoshim tiyu, you will be holy, ki kodesh ani Hashem lekechem, as I, the Lord your God, are holy. Now notice it says, speak to the entire Jewish people. So the Al Shulchan Kodesh says that it means, don't think that when we're talking about becoming holy and godlike, which sounds a bit corny in English, but that's really the role of a Jew, to reflect God in our behavior. In fact, as I think also mentioned to you recently, the Ramban says in his Igros HaKodesh, which is a sefer about the laws of intimacy, marital intimacy, but still in the introduction he points out that those who make either Kiddush Hashem or Chilul Hashem are uniquely from Jews. Only we ultimately make a Kiddush Hashem because we are wearing the clothes. And the Yarmulke, we're making a statement. We are religious Jews. And if it's the case that we religious Jews, and it's known, are supposed to reflect and behave like God, and you will go in his ways, Zekeli Anvehu, and Vehu is Anivahu, I'm supposed to reflect God, and you behave all terribly in business or in interpersonal behavior, then people go, if he stinks and he's behaving like God, then Rahman al-Islam, God stinks. Or if you're a tzaddik and you behave extremely well, then by definition people say, oh, that's what God's like. So we and only we can have that with us. We're supposed to be Kedoshim. And it says, speak to every single Jew. Because the general idea is, don't think, says the Alshich, that he's standing there to watch God really saying this, but he's talking to the Chofetz Chaim, he's talking to the Vilna Gaon, he's talking to the Belzer Rebbe, he's talking to, no. He's talking to every single Jew. Every single Jew can be a Kodesh. Now that's nonsense, surely. To be a Kodesh, and incidentally, what's the level, what's the measure of Kedusha? Me. Kedoshim Tiki, Kodesh Ani Hashem Elokeichem. So the Alshich says something here which I thought was absolutely fantastic. There's lots of answers, and he asked that obvious question, how can you compare yourself to God? It seems mad. However, he says, if you look very carefully, it says, Kedoshim Tiyu, Ki Kodesh Ani Hashem. Kedoshim is spelled Kuf Dalet Shin Yud Mem. Hashem says, Ki Kodesh Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Kodesh, Kuf Dalet Vav Shin. That's how you spell the word. But Hashem says, Kadoshim to you, but that's lacking of Vav, Ki Kodoshim. You're not going to be exactly me. Don't be crazy. I'm not suggesting that. But the 13 meters of Hashem Yisborach, the Hashem, Karach, Mechanic, is merciful, and all that sort of thing, that I've put into you, or some of the ones that I've put into you, allows you to copy my behavior, and in so doing, then you can become Kodesh as well. You're not going to become God, but you're going to be God-like. You're going to reflect God. There is a wonderful essay by Shlomo Vilna.
How does that answer the question?
What's the question?
So everybody's expected to be on top of
Every Jew can reach the level of somebody who reflects God. Doesn't mean to say you have to glow in the dark, but your behavior could be one that is, as it were, gives other human beings an insight into what God's like. If somebody,
means you have to act perfectly at all times.
Well, that would be the ambition, but let's not try perfectly, because who can be perfect? As Shlomo Melech said, driving the knock a policeman down. Yeah, that would be a bad thing. Yeah, but you look in the similar. My Rosh Yeshiva Reb Leib Gurovitz, so Ketzad Livrach, was the son-in-law of Reb Eli Lapian. So in America say Lapian. I think in Israel you also say Lapian, don't you? So Lopian. So the two brothers-in-laws of the gate said Rosh Yeshiva in my time, Reb Leib Lapian and Reb Leib Gurovitz. They were brothers-in-law. So Reb Leib Lapian was obviously the son of Reb Eli Lapian, and Reb Leib Gurovitz, the son-in-law. His son, Reb Avram Gurovitz, is a mixture of both. So he's a Gurovitz, and his wife is a Lopian. So he actually married his first cousin. So very exciting stuff. Anyway, I'm not telling you that. So Reb Elia said about his son-in-law, my Rosh Yeshiva Reb Leib Gurovitz, he was a walking Mesilas Yesharim. Got that here actually, I was going to quote that to you in a second. Mesilas Yesharim, he was a walking Mesilas Yesharim. Reb Leib didn't drive a car, but if he drove a car, he'd be a driving Mesilas Yesharim. And if he worked in an office, he would be a businessman who was a Mesilas Yesharim. Mesilas Yesharim is supposed to permeate and percolate every single aspect of your life. So yes, but not perfect. Don't go back to being a malach inside of auras. But it should be that your behavior is that you treat your workers and your colleagues right, etc., etc. And if somebody overpays you, you pay it back, and that sort of thing. You can see godliness in the person's behavior, right? You don't have to be the Vilna Gaon to be an honest person in business. There is an Ali Shor. I think this should be, especially as we're literally 1 week away from Lag BaOmer, and of course we're going to recall the failures of Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim. But And of course it says there, how's it go?
שני עוזר תלמידים.
So there's 12,000 pairs. Shine also 11 zugim talmidim. Yeah. There was 12,000 pairs of Chassidim there was to Rabbi Akiva. Why not say 24,000? So of course, if you think of Rabbi Akiva, you think of one thing, and that is v'hafta l'recha k'meicha. Right? V'hafta l'recha k'meicha. They all die at the exact same time, and that is this time of the year. Between Pesach and Shavuos, because Shalom Nogel covered Zelazah, because they didn't give covered one to the other. Right, okay. Why in pairs? Because his thing was v'hafta l'recha k'meicha. If at this time, going out from Pesach to Shavuos, when we stood at Har Sinai, or we're going to stand at Har Sinai, we will reach and we'll get, the process of getting there is a process where you understand other people, and you understand exactly who and what they are, and that they're different to you, and not every Jew has to be the same. And they're still valuable, and maybe it's just the guy, the simple guy who can only sort of like be honest in business, but he's never going to master Shas. And then the other guy who can master Shas and do whatever he's supposed to do, but each can reflect God. But if they don't get that, if Shalom Noga covers Elazar, as the Marshal says, they didn't value each other's Torah, then by definition, you cannot be the next link in the chain to carry the Torah on to the next generation. Here's an essay in Ali Shar's Chelik Basin, page Kufnun base, and I think this should be learned off by heart by every kid in this horrible and long schlepping on Golas. So it's called, it's very interesting, you can see the word there, it's called Frumkeit. Frumkeit. How would you translate Frumkeit? It's already an intriguing chapter. I mean, if you look at the thing, you say Frumkeit. So what's the translation of Frumkeit?
Religiosity.
They usually translate it slightly differently. How would you translate it? It's translated as piety, to be pious, to be frum. Modern, it just means, it's supposed to mean Shem and Torah mitzvahs, but as he's going to tell you, it means anything but. So he brings a posset from Yeshua and Zion Yudal. Solo ponoderach, harima mishom derech ami. Clear the path, remove the stumbling block, the rock or perhaps the hole of Barber Shisarabim, like you get in so many New York roads. Move the stumbling block from in front of my people. What is the stumbling block? There is on the path that leads you towards Hashem, this evolution, this ongoing, this marathon that will take you there. There's a great big thing that can trip you up, and that Frumkeit, and it's called Frumkeit, Shishmoy Frumkeit. Interesting. And in brackets it says, it doesn't have there's no Hebrew word for Frumkeit. Isn't that interesting? Yiddish idea. Now, fortunately, we have somebody with us tonight who's going to help us, because, as you know, Ali Shar is extremely difficult. We read him just recently, or last year, I think. And the language is very, very tough. Okay. Would you, of course, for you it's a piece of cake. Or do you, even as an Israeli, do you find it very choshev? I think it's, okay. So for us, brought up in it's like studying an English text from Chaucer or Shakespeare. Okay, but because somebody's going to help us, okay? Listen, Frumkeit hi de chuf tivoi. So Frumkeit is a drive, a human drive, a natural human drive. And here's a word here, maybe you can help with this. Instinctivity. Anybody else can get that in? Instinctivity? Right. Okay. An instinctive drive. And it said Frumkeit's definition is an innate human drive to connect to God. Jean-Paul Sartre, the famous French philosopher, an existentialist, but nobody's perfect, liked to say that a modern man, that's 20th century man, has a God-shaped hole in him. In other words, the religion, the connection between the human and God has been removed, and God was meant to be dead in the 20th century. In the 21st century, he seems to be quite alive. That's the Muslims. Anyway, and it is a drive to connect to God. Instinct there. And you can find it in Bali Chaim as well. Apparently animals, because it says kfir, even a little baby lion, sort of calls out to God for its substance, whatever it means. Sorry? And Perishir as well, yeah. Somehow or another, when I was in Yeshiva, I'd never heard of Perishir. Nobody did. Was it a recent publication? Anyway.
That's in Kanievsky.
Really? Was it her? Anyway, so he says a very interesting thing. He says, also had an instinct poil ba'odom, so that same instinct that works in animals works in human beings as well. But Kamuvan is obvious, but Rama Yosef is certainly more sophisticated. Frumkeit tivoizu azoris lana ba'avodas Hashem. And that natural feeling of wanting to connect with God is a huge help within us in connecting with God and dealing with God. Then without that, it would be incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, to have a relationship or to connect with God if you didn't, as it were, feel naturally driven to do so. Frumkeit he kamai kol de chuf instinctivi. However, frumkeit, like every basic human instinct, apol ba'odem that works within you and I, egotistis. Can you translate it for us? Egotistic, anarchias, self-centered. Bitavor, in its very nature. Okay, think of the most basic human instinct. What's the most basic human instinct? No. Well, yes, it's a general thing. Survival, survival, right? Which is, I suppose, selfish. But selfish, certainly. That's why we've got all these. When you get onto a plane, back to the airports, then they tell you the safety briefing, which nobody pays the slightest bit of attention to. But it was, did you see that last week there was a fire in some Russian plane? And there were people killed. Do you know why? Some of the people were killed because before it burst into flames, that's right, people, instead of rushing off, were taking their stuff out of the... Hello? And people died because of that.
Get a charger to the phone.
Sorry?
To get a charger.
That's right. That's right, yeah. Wow. And of course, everybody knows when there is a fire, that's a good way to kill lots of people, simply go to a movie theatre, theatre in... not Wall Street, what's it called? Broadway. And simply sit in the middle and go fire. People run. And when people run, they trample over other people. And because I'm looking after myself. So the most basic human instinct is survival. But all human instincts, as you say, are selfish. So therefore, this natural instinct is and does work within us to do stuff which is good for us. Listen to this. The interaction of bein Adam l'chaveri, the gam mais l'shma bein Adam l'mokim, and doing things l'shma between you and Hashem, having a proper relationship with God, will not be sustained, be fed from frumkeit. I'm a basis of avodah alecha levad. And if that's the basis of your relationship with God, nishar anochi, you will remain innately a selfish person. Afila im yachmir al atzma chumras ba'arabbas. Even you take on every chumrah in the world, the most strict level of observance, you get not a double-decker shtreimel, but a triple-decker shtreimel. You grow your pants down to your ankles. You get, shocking pink socks to fit, into your knickerbockers and all that. Fine, nothing. It's nothing. Ish chesed loyi. You will not be a real ish chesed. And your relationship with God will not be l'shma either. Oh, you'll be doing chesed, but you'll be doing it for you. Either you'll be doing it because you want status in the community, or you want brownie points upstairs. But that's not it. No, our avodah has to be based on das, on what the Torah sets out for us as an approach. So let's pause for a second.
So sometimes you have to compromise on your own remoker to do better in the military.
I wouldn't say compromise. I mean, when Avraham Avinu sees a malach, whom he doesn't know is a couple of malachim, he thinks they're Arabs, and he says to whom he's having a prophetic. Hashem. Sorry, as they say in Israel. I don't know if he did that, but you get the idea. Yeah, fine. Or when Moshe says when he says to Hashem, okay, after 7 days, all right, okay, I'll do it, right, I'll do it. He said, but the only thing is I've got to go and ask Yisrael. There's a human interaction. Hashem said, fair enough. Yeah, sometimes your human interactions do actually trump that, and we said that not too long ago when I showed you the Mabit last. Sorry.
Would he have not gone had Yisrael not granted? Like we find Yaakov consulted Rachel.
That's very.
He tried to convince them. Yeah. They were on board with him, but he would have.
That's a very interesting question. It's hard to know the answer to that, but certainly, Chaim Friedland is a Chassid Livrocha. He says that the most fundamental Jewish midah is a korosatayv. So the whole job of Moshe and the whole job of Yisrael Mitzrayim, so we've got a year, basically all the 10 Commandments, the Makos in Mitzrayim, which are going to uproot the effects of 210 years in Egypt. Basically, it was something, it was roughly 11 months, I think. And that gets us to, as it were, refocus on who we were, what we used to believe that before we compromised it. And here's my sheep coming out and saying hello. Moshe has to undo everything that Mitzrayim has done for us, okay? Now, he has to therefore replace these rotten midas with the right midas. And when we come to Har Sinai, the job's done when God speaks to us directly, and then we say, enough, Moshe, you take over here, we can't stand this because we die, whatever that means, blah, blah, and then our souls come back. But the first thing Hashem says to us is, Anochi Hashem Elokechem, Asher Hosesichom Me'eretz Yisrael. So why do you say that bit? Just say, I'm the Lord your God. Is that who took you out from Egypt? But Hashem knows that if I press the Hakoras Hatov button, the gratitude button, the you owe me one button, the Jewish people will respond to that. So Recham Friedlander says that's clearly therefore the most important Jewish midah. Where did they get that from? So Moshe has to give them that, but if Moshe has to give them, if I give you a lesson just now in Greek, I know nothing about Greek language at all. I know that marathon is a Greek word. That's very good. And what else do I know in Greek? Alpha, beta, omega. Oh my God, I know nothing, right? Or no, a better example is that I used to, once upon a time, speak French. Probably badly, but I used to speak French. But I've forgotten, and every time I try to speak French, because I haven't spoken it since I was 17, then I just get into a mess and it's embarrassing. Every mistake, every word that I've forgotten, if I was giving you a French class, I would give you every mistake, right, that I've, from lack of memory or maybe not getting it right in the first place. If you're teaching somebody something, you can only give them what you've got. So if this is the crucial Jewish midah, and Moshe Rabbeinu has to convey that to him, he has to be full of it himself. So when he says, I owe Yisro, you have to save my life, Hakoras Hatov. If I don't do that, then in a sense, whether or not he would have done it, but he would have done it maybe without permission, but then it would have been deficient, and then Klal Yisrael would not have been, maybe we would have said no. Hashem would not have that button to press. That's a very interesting idea.
A bit hypocritical.
Sorry?
It would have been a bit hypocritical.
Well, not just hypocritical, but the process would have been flawed. Yeah, it would be hypocritical perhaps, but certainly the process would have been flawed because he would have passed on a midah, or the parameters of midah, which were damaged. Okay, but listen to this bit. This is absolutely fabulous. Again, we're talking, remember, a journey. So here he says, of course, the general rule is that if you've got an idea, a Jewish vort, a shtick Torah, which is absolutely fabulous beyond fabulous, then it's automatically claimed by the Hasidim as something the Baal Shem Tov said, and the Litvaks is something the Vilna Gaon said. That's how you know if something is unbelievably fabulous, that both the Hasidic and the non-Hasidic worlds claim it as being that. This is one of those. Here it's said in the name of Nossos V. Finkel, but I've heard it in the name of the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon as well. So here it is. But the vorts, it's deep. Listen to this. Moran Hagon or Nossos V. Finkel Tzaddik V'Racha Saba Mitzlabotka, so the founder of Yeshiva Slobodka, so back in the real Slobodka, the original Slobodka. Omar says, there's a mitzvah b'havta re'echa kamocha. Yeah. Sheta'ahov es re'echa kamocha ata oiv es atzmcha. Which automatically means you're going to love somebody the way that you love yourself. Now listen. Es atzmcha incha oiv l'shem mitzvah. You don't love yourself because of mitzvah, do you? You don't get up in the morning and look at yourself and go, oh no, Yehuda, hold on, there is a mitzvah to love myself so that I can love other people. Oh, he's not that bad. That's what I do. When I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror and I think, you handsome devil. Well, I'm glad you're here. What a really nice face. Or whatever. You automatically, naturally love ourselves. The mitzvah, the V'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, is to love somebody the way you love yourself. Not as a mitzvah. If you love as a mitzvah, that's frumkeit. Then you're doing it for reward. That's you doing something for you. But you got to love somebody for them. That's a whole different kettle of fish. If they say that expression in England. Do you say that in America? No. Okay.
No.
A barrel of cheese? Whatever you say. Okay. It's a hava which is natural. It's just part of you. The circle of Israel, so you got to love somebody else as well. And that is utterly alien to the concept of Frumkai. So in trying to get the path to get towards Hashem, and it's an ongoing thing. It's a marathon. But in that path, in that race, somebody is stuck. Somebody showed me a video. Oh, it's so funny, Sam. It's so funny. I don't know where this was, but we're doing one of these races, and they jump over, what's that? They jump over those things. Hurdles. So, all the guys are going. There's one guy, he just crashed straight into the ball. Boom, 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 boom. Somebody didn't tell him the rules of this game. Everybody else is jumping over, and he's going. I think he get disqualified. But there are, there's a big stumbling block. You think you're doing great, Gewaldic. Oh, look at me, long days. Missed the boat completely. But it's an ongoing thing. It's a path. And you have to measure, and sometimes you have to go faster, and sometimes you have to go slower. We say that in Mariv. Sometimes you're trying to move forward and something there is hand against your chest. You're not going. Oh, that's easy to picture that one, but sometimes he's behind you, pushing you in the shoulder blades to do too much. Sometimes to do too much, to go too fast, sometimes to go too slow. You've got to get the balance right. Interestingly, this idea, again, because we mentioned Mesilas Yashar, Mesilas Yashar, as everybody knows, right at the beginning, it quotes the famous Mishnah of Pinchas ben Yoer, Torah maybe l'dei Zehiras, and Zehiras maybe l'dei Zrizas, and Zrizas maybe l'dei Nikia, and Nikias maybe l'dei Precious, etc., etc. Until eventually you come to to Kedusha, and then Kedusha maybe l'dei Ruach HaKodesh, and Ruach HaKodesh maybe l'dei Techiyas HaMesah. Ruach HaKodesh is the stage before Nevi'as. It might be to come to. It's a progress. It's a progression, stage by stage by stage, and then eventually you get there. How do you get there? It's this halacha thing. It's interesting. The Chofetz Chaim, the holy Chofetz Chaim, basically his works are based on halacha. Here's I find this I learn at the moment we're learning Pirkei Avos and Michael Brissa in the morning. And this is a very well-known Mishnah. Everybody knows this Mishnah, Perek Hein in Mishnah Yud. Arba midas ba'adam. There are two types of measures. I think that's why I called it the measurement of a Jew. Arba midas ba'adam, different. 4 metrics in a person. Ha'omer shali shali v'shalach shalach. So somebody says, well, yours is yours and mine is mine. Okay? Zu mida beinanis. And that's a sort of middle approach. Right? And then what does the Mishnah say? No. Other people think that's Zemi to Sodom, right? So this is a bit more tricky, that one. Okay. Shali shalach b'shalach shali. Mine is yours, shalach b'shalach shali. Sorry, shali shalach. Yeah, mine is yours, b'shalach shali, and yours is mine. It's not like socialist, right? Communist, right? Okay. Amoros, ignoramus. Shali shalach b'shalach shalach chosid. So what's a chosid? Somebody says, mine is yours, and yours is yours. That's a bit of a problem. Does that ever strike you as strange? What's mine is yours, and yours is yours as well. I would have said that was an amorit. Rabbi Desta says at the beginning of Mitzvah Menio, he talks about so many rabbis whose children went off the derech because their father were too busy solving other people's children's problems, but they didn't have enough time for their own children and their problems. So I was once in a southern town, down south, one of the southern states. I was doing a Shabbaton, and I met there a couple from, I would say, mid-50s, a couple from Brooklyn, and it was why they were there, I don't know. Sort of, the sort of shul, only one Orthodox shul in this little town. And you could maybe get a minyan in the morning. It's one of the sort of, everybody knows, sort of shows the rabbis literally sitting, with a phone. In those days, it was a phone, phoning people saying, hello, Chaim, we've got 9 people here, 6. Could you come up to make the minyan? So it's kind of like, Shmuel, we've got 7, that sort of thing. So what were they doing there? So it's interesting, they were there because they told me that their story that they came from Brooklyn and he was in partnership in business with somebody. And the guy ran away with all the money. And so it was a whole big nasty, as these things are, a nasty case, the sort of case that the Chofetz Chaim would get angry about, and I would be Scottish about. And And so they'd asked the local rabbi to try and help. Who the rabbi was, they didn't know. It was David Cohen or somebody big. And he tried to help, but it had not been a success. But they felt let down by the rabbi. They felt let down by the community, and so they just turned their back in New York and ended up in this little town down south. I wrote about this in one of my articles for Hamodia, and I said, but that it was unfair because the rabbi had tried to help, but they were very angry with the rabbi. But he had tried to help. So somebody wrote a furious letter from Chicago. And saying this is a cop-out. How can you say that? Yeah, you said the rabbi did his best, but you can always do more. And that, which gave me another article for Hamodia. Is of course you can always do more, but should you always do more? Should you do more? So if it comes to, there's a mahalach for chesed. Mahalach for chesed, if you're doing chesed, it's the ultimate chesed you do for somebody who needs money. You set him up in business, give him a job, set him up in business, so he feels a mensch. He doesn't know it comes from you, right? Next is that you don't know who you're giving to, and the person doesn't know who he's getting from. Well, same thing. It's humbling. The guy doesn't know that he's been helped, right? And who helps him. And then there's a whole set of madrigas. Or the other halacha says quite clearly that suppose you have $1,000 that we mentioned before to give away to tzedakah. How should you give away that? Should you find some poor guy, give him $1,000 and make a big boost in his life, or find 1,000 poor people and give them $1 each? And the answer is, you find 1,000 people and give them $1 each. In fact, somebody once came to the Chofetz Chaim to say he'd been offered a job in a bank, and should he take the job? And the Chofetz Chaim's advice was based on the following question. He asked him, are you going to be working at the window, the teller who's giving out the money, or the window where you take in the money? Maybe Polish banks, that's how it worked, I'm not sure. Polish. He says, if it's the window you're taking in the money, don't take the job. But if you're giving out the money, you should take the job. This is crazy. It's not your money. You're just working in a bank. It's the bank's money. It's the person's money, right? So what does it mean? No, the act of giving in and of itself, you're teaching yourself 1,000 times to give. That becomes ingrained. It becomes part of you. So here it says the mitzvah is shali shalach v'shalach shali zachosid. So I just saw when I was learning the Tosas Yontov, he says, Lo shemavazas kol asher loi. Not that you give away everything that's yours. Shari Omer, it says in Kesubas, mavazas lo yavazas yosem mechamish. There's a maximum you give away, which is a fifth. Make yourself give away everything so you become a pauper. So your children are going to be, say, oh, very good, you gave away what but us. And sadly, in no cases like we're talking about derech. We're talking about what is the right amount that you should. There's halachas here in how to become the right sort of person, how to get to the end of that road. Not too much, not too little. How do you become a Chofetz Chaim? You're not born a Chofetz Chaim. You're on a path. But it's a path you have to realize it's got stumbling blocks in it. If it's just about you, our role in life, our Mahalach HaChaim, is to get ourselves not I-centered, but al das. Our relationship with God and other people is das. And when you do that, as Moshe Rabbeinu did, and Taka, at the end of his life, his face does shine. But it's halacha. You go stage after stage, what's this measure, how much, etc., etc. Then you get to the end.
How do you answer the